Well, hi, hello, and how are you? My name is Cynple, and here on my channel we talk about the wonders of nature and their benefits for healthy hair, skin, nails, gut health, and overall well-being. Today we're going to talk about hair loss and a specific type of hair loss called Anagen Effluvium. And by the end of this video, you will be able to piece together different forms of hair loss, and you'll have the tools and the remedies that you need to reverse it once and for all. So if you want to get to the bottom of this, then make sure you get a pen and paper out, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching. So what is Anagen Effluvium? Anagen Effluvium is hair loss that occurs when the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle is disrupted. Now, there are multiple different forms of the hair growth cycle listed here on the bottom of the screen. And today we're going to talk about the anagen phase. But if you want to know a little bit more about these phases, then check this playlist here, because I go deep into all phases of the hair growth cycle there. But here we're going to learn how an imbalance in the body can throw off these hair growth cycles and how to set them back. So when we're talking about Anagen Effluvium, this is when the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle is interrupted. So within the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle is the phase of the hair growth cycle where new hair growth cells are being reproduced. The hair, skin, and nails are produced within your gut. The biotin is produced within the gut. But if the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle is cut off, instead of the hair, the 55 to 100 strands a day that you're losing, instead of those being longer pieces, you'll notice that the pieces are a lot shorter. Now, most people will look and say, oh, these shorter pieces that are falling out are breakage. But I want you to do me a favor, and if you're noticing little shorter pieces that are falling out, what I want you to do is pick them up, look at them really close, and see if whether or not there are any splits, if there are any broken ends. And most likely you'll find that there are no splits. What's happening is your anagen phase of your hair growth cycle is shorter than it is supposed to be. So instead of the shed hairs being longer like the rest of your hair, they're a lot shorter, because that's something in your diet, something in your body, something in your environment is causing your anagen phase to be shorter. So this is why the hairs that you're shedding are shorter, because the anagen phase is cutting itself shorter, which then speeds up the canogen phase, speeds up the telogen phase, and then speeds up the estrogen phase. So instead of you losing longer hairs that have been growing for 7 years, you're losing shorter hairs that have only been growing for a couple of months. So let's talk about it. What does the word effluvium mean in the first place? Because there are two different forms of effluvium. We are talking right now about Anagen Effluvium, and in the next video we're going to dive deeper into telogen effluvium. But the word effluvium literally means, and is literally characterized as an excessive amount of hair loss, right? Shedding, excessive amounts of shedding or hair loss from the hair is what the term effluvium means. So again, it is known or classified as the shedding or outflow of hair in overabundance, right? That is what effluvium is. So when we say Anagen Effluvium, it's like in the anagen phase of your hair, you're shedding excessively. Telogen effluvium, through the telogen phase of your hair growth cycle, you're shedding excessively, right? So that's what the term effluvium means. It's not a big deal, right? But what becomes a big deal is if you ignore the signs. Excessive shedding or a lot of shorter pieces, those is coming from two things. You really could have just certain pieces of your hair shaft that are just breaking off slowly but surely, right? Like piece by piece over time, right? Certain hair strands are just getting weaker and breaking off piece by piece. That's a really big possibility. That's a really big possibility as well. However, the majority of people who experience excessive shedding and they're all shorter pieces, or if the majority of the hairs that you're seeing are shorter pieces, then most likely you have Anagen Effluvium, and you are a person that is witnessing or experiencing the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle being a lot shorter. So before we move on, Let me know in the comments, in the chat, if whether or not this is making sense. Let's get into some of the causes of anagen effluvium, because all of them do not have to do with unhealthy hair practices. A lot of times balding and certain forms of effluvium or certain forms of hair loss in general can have a lot of different sources. That's why it's so imperative that you don't just turn on a YouTube video and just listen to any and everything that anybody has to say, because there's so many different causes. Number one is going to be chemotherapy, because chemotherapy is, you need it, right? In some cases you need it. It ends up killing all of the cancerous cells, but the only thing about chemotherapy, it ends up killing the good cells too, because remember what I said, when you're in the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle, the cells within your gut are dividing and multiplying themselves to produce new hair growth cells. So when you go through chemotherapy, what happens is it basically stops the cell division process. So your hair is not, your body isn't producing new hair growth cells, and as your body is producing those healthy hair growth cells, your chemotherapy is killing off those cells. That's what the radiation is supposed to do. This is why most people, after they beat cancer, because y'all be beating cancer out here, after you beat cancer and once you set your patterns and your routine back, your hair grows back like no problem, because the cells are no longer being divided, and through the anagen phase of your hair growth cycle, your body can produce healthy cells like it's supposed to. That's number one. Number two will be radiation therapy. Of course, radiation therapy, radiation does the same thing. It kills those cells, and again, it is all about the cell division process, and the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle is all about producing healthy hair growth cells. So anything that you do that causes radiation and death to the hair growth cells, or a decrease in the production or the splitting of those cells, will directly result in you not growing hair, because the only way that you can grow hair is if within the anagen phase of your hair growth cycle, your hair is producing new cells and splitting them apart and producing new ones, and just keep multiplying. We ain't supposed to die, we supposed to multiply. Number three is going to be toxic exposure, and different exposure to certain toxins. Whenever you breathe certain things within the body, they also have the ability to kill certain cells within your body. Remember, certain chemicals and certain toxins, they are literally meant to kill things, and your cells are not any different from that, right? So that's why it's so important that you really make sure when it says that something is going to kill cells, it's going to kill the good and bad ones. Even when we're talking about herbs, nature doesn't know the difference between the good or the bad ones. You want to kill bacteria, it's going to kill bacteria, because nature doesn't see bacteria as good or bad. It's just this bacteria, and this feeds it, and the more you feed the bacteria, the more it grows. If you have any type of toxic exposure that kills cells or that slows down cell production, you will directly be affected with your hair growth, because your hair growth again is dependent on that cell division and that cell production. Number five is going to be serious infections. Now, whenever you have any type of illness or infection or anything like that, it gets your immune system fighting, right? And when your immune system starts to fight, it sends signals to the whole body like,
hey, gang, like, there's some stuff going on over here in aisle 5. I need all of y'all to pause for a minute. I know you trying to grow hair, and I know you trying to do all of that, but they trying to jump us on aisle 5. So I need y'all to put all of y'all important stuff, and then
your hair cells,
hey, you gonna be okay. We not gonna die if you get bald head. They may be looking at you funny, but you ain't nothing gonna happen to you. So we're about to go over here and help this part of the body. And then once this part of the body is healthy, we'll be back over here to help you grow hair, because you're gonna be tired of being bald head.
That's what happens, right? But it's not this sing and dance thing to where your body is separate from each other. All things are interconnected. So whenever you have any type of stress within the body, you trigger telogen effluvium. And when you trigger telogen effluvium, which is hair fall and shedding brought on by stress, we'll talk about that coming up next, but when you involve stress stress, it triggers your body to do so many different things. It triggers your body to release cortisol and so many other things. So this is why it's so important to really pay attention to the way that you're keeping up with your body, strengthening your immune system, because when your immune system is damaged, when your body is sick, it sends out signals. And when it sends out signals, one of the first things to go is your hair. Why? Because it's the thing that you don't really need that much, right? Like when bills get rough, when money get tight, what's the first thing you cutting off? Netflix, like all of the stuff that don't really matter, that you don't really watch like that. Like I don't be on Peacock like that, so you get rid of stuff. So your hair is the peacock of your body. If everything is going awry, the last thing that your body gonna be paying attention to is your hair. So you may be a bald-headed skittle diddle until you lose some of the weight in the middle. And that wasn't a shot at, you know, if you're feeling chunky. It's just most of the time health problems is brought on by weight. Okay, so let's get into some of the symptoms of Anagen Effluvium. What should you be looking for to see if whether or not it's something that you need to even be pressed about? Rapid hair loss is going to be number one, and the rapid hair loss will be within days or sometimes even weeks, and sometimes within months of whatever the thing is that caused it in the first place. So the radiation and all of the other things that we talked about would also happen immediately. I also want you guys to note that stress, even though we've been talking about stress from emotions or your physical body, one thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to is one of the main forms of stress to the hair shaft is done during hairstyling. So when you're braiding and it's really hurt, and it's really hurting, and you feel like you have to pop a Tylenol just to be able to make it through the braiding process, that is a braiding, what's wrong? That's a braiding process that will most likely lead to Anagen Effluvium. Why? Because it's something that is really causing stress to the hair follicle, and we talked about what happens when the body is dealing with stress, right? And when you are also greasing the scalp, oiling the scalp, you actually cut off blood flow and oxygen flow to the follicle. It throws the whole system off, right? Because hair care is a holistic practice. So there are so many different things when it comes to styling that lead to you really damaging the hair follicle that can push you directly into Anagen Effluvium. Next sign that you'll see is the sudden loss of a lot of hair, like large quantities, like clumps of hair at one time in sections. Like you just maybe or be combing and then you'll just see hair in your hair. That is a form of Anagen Effluvium. All right, when you are just noticing like just all of this hair just falling out of your hair, that is a really big sign and a really big notification. The next thing, number 3, the thing that you would also notice is not everybody who has shorter pieces shedding has Anagen Effluvium, but if every time you comb your hair, the majority of hair that you see on the table are shorter pieces, that means that your anagen phase is a lot shorter than it's supposed to be. Because keep in mind, the average anagen phase is about 7 years. So if you're constantly shedding hair that's in really short pieces, most likely you have Anagen Effluvium, and it's nothing to be worried about. You know why? It means that hair growth cycle is working, it's set, but there's something throwing it off balance. So if you balance it, you'll fix the hair growth cycle. That's the great part about knowing the signs. So when you see the signs, you can troubleshoot. Again, the loss of hair in big patches or in large amounts will really directly affect the way that your hair is looking. So if you're a person who is just randomly waking up and you see big bald patches in your hair for no reason, you can't figure it out, this is a form of Anagen Effluvium. Remember, here on my channel, I really recommend that you guys always go and do your research yourself. That's why I'm teaching you what the word effluvium means, just so you can break all of these words down and do your research for yourself. I'm not making nothing up. Now, telogen effluvium effluvium is a little less scary than Anagen Effluvium, because telogen effluvium is only affecting the hairs that are in the resting phase of the hair growth cycle, whereas the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle affects the hairs that are in the active growing phase. Remember, the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle can last anywhere from like 7 to 10 years. A lot of Asian women and Asian men have hair growth cycles that are up to like 10 years. So if you again are a person who's noticing shorter pieces, that's your anagen phase being shortened. But again, it's a really big difference between telogen and anagen, because anagen is affecting that active phase. So now let's get into treatment and management. The number one thing that you have to do when you are experiencing any form of hair loss is targeting the cause. And the main problem that people always have is the first thing that they want to do is tackle the manifestation, and the manifestation of your inflammation, or the manifestation of whatever that trigger is the balding. But something out of all of the different things that we named has led to the anagen effluvium, and when you stop that thing, and only when you stop that thing will you reverse anagen effluvium. The problem that most people have when it's like, okay, my hair is falling out, so I'm gonna go online and I'm gonna get this product and this product or grow my hair back. It probably will at first, but then eventually that product too will stop working. Does that mean that the product doesn't work? No, it doesn't. It just means that the thing that you started doing to trigger the inflammation that led to your hair falling out and that led to the anagen effluvium in the first place, you're still doing. So it's never going to stop. It's never going to go away until you find the triggers, the causes, and stop them. So that's number one. I recommend going in for a skin biopsy to a dermatologist. All right, when you go in to see a dermatologist, you shouldn't necessarily put all of your eggs in that basket and say, okay, this dermatologist is gonna help me. Because the dermatologist was not there when you've been doing all of the practices that led you to anagen effluvium or whatever different hair follicle disorder that you may have, right? The doctor wasn't there for that, so you couldn't put all of that in the doctor's hand. The reason that we're going to dermatologists, and the reason that I always recommend you to go to a dermatologist, is because a dermatologist can do things that a trichologist and a cosmetologist cannot do. Okay, so coming from a person who holds both of those titles, a dermatologist does things that I cannot do, like giving you a skin biopsy, right? Testing your blood, seeing what your sugar, seeing what your levels are, seeing what you're deficient in, so that way you can go home and adjust your diet and adjust your lifestyle so you can start putting back in those things that you're lacking. So my suggestion to you is, before you buy a product, before you spend a whole bunch of money, especially if you have insurance, make an appointment with your dermatologist. Tell your dermatologist, hey, I'm experiencing hair loss and I just want to get some blood work done just so I can know what my levels are, so I can figure out what I need to do. But most people go into the dermatologist and say, okay, give me something that I could put on my hair to fix all my problems, where in reality your anagen effluvium could be for so many different reasons, like what we talked about here. So even though, yes, it's great for your dermatologist to be able to give you something for you to put on your scalp, but the number one thing you need to do is troubleshoot your life, change your lifestyle and your patterns that led you to this form of anagen effluvium to begin with. Again, it could be something like chemotherapy, which that's something that is beyond your control. But for the majority of women who are suffering from hair loss, especially women from the Team Natural and curly communities and stuff, most of the forms of alopecia are self-inflicted, like alopecia areata. Alopecia areata is a form of anagen effluvium, right? That is the category that we end up putting alopecia areata within that Anagen Effluvium category. Most of the time, if you go in to see a doctor or anything like that, they'll prescribe different things like minoxidil and things of that nature. So I always say go in, make sure you take your time before you go in, and find a dermatologist whose work you can really trust, who has really good reviews, and just really have a plan before you go in. That's the same thing for hair salons. Most people just get up like, oh, something wrong with my hair. They don't have a plan, nothing. They just walk in, fix me. Don't do that. Wigs and hair pieces. Through the growing process of Anagen Effluvium, one of the things that I think hurts women the most is they think that in the growing back phase they still need to have hairstyles, and it's not true. That's actually what wigs and weaves and different things like that are for, right? When you have a client who is, like, for example, dealing with chemotherapy or any type of ailment that causes balding for temporary seasons, or just like with my autoimmune disorder that my body deals with, HS, if I'm having a reaction in my head, one of the things that I go to so I can grow my hair back without bothering it, without causing more mechanical damage, I would get a wig or a weave or something like that so I could give my hair a break. And that is one of my number one suggestions. But people are so anti, oh, if you wear a weave you don't love yourself. But I would say if you have any form of Anagen Effluvium and you're still doing all of that extra stuff to your hair, you the one that don't love yourself that much, because it hurt. It's like if you have Anagen Effluvium or any type of scalp or hair follicle disorder and you're still doing a whole bunch of tugging and pulling and products and all of that, it's like you're adding insult to injury. Your hair is really not healing because of you. One thing that we learned, that I learned in school, was cooling, right? Cooling of the scalp. So if somebody is suffering from balding or anything like that, we would do a process where you get a follicle detox, right, and a hair shaft detox. Then you get a deep conditioner treatment off of the scalp, and then after that we would give you a cooling treatment, right, where we cool the scalp. And by cooling the scalp, that change in the temperature, what it does, it increases the blood flow and the blood circulation, right? Because blood flow is one thing, blood circulation is another thing. So you want to increase the flow and the circulation throughout the scalp, right? And so cooling of the scalp is something that is really used, especially with dermatologists. They go through processes where they heat and cool the scalp to increase and circulate blood flow. And by circulating and increasing blood flow within the scalp, you highly increase the amount of hair growth cells that you're able to produce. Hope that makes sense. Different signs for you to pay attention to. One, like we talked about, increased shedding without any broken ends, right? Just shedding of a whole bunch of shorter pieces. That's number one. Thinning hair, which will show up as the overall reduction of your hair's density, and your hair will look a little less vibrant and just really limp. Number three is going to be shorter hairs, especially in places where you notice your hair used to grow a lot longer but it's just not growing. Or I hear a lot of people say like their hair will grow but it always gets stuck at one length and then it never picks up again. Most likely you're suffering from Anagen Effluvium. Changes in your hair texture, like I said, your hair may feel a little limp and like brittle. A receding hairline, or just noticing like thinning along your edges and your hairline, even though it may not be balding. Lady, you haven't had any traction alopecia, you don't use edge control, you don't use oil on your ends, it's an internal problem. An increase in the amount of hair that you find in your brushes, your combs, or your hair drain is a really big sign. So now that you know all of the signs, all of the causes, all of the little scientific words, what are some of the things that you can use to reverse it? So within Cynple Apothecary, rosemary. We have a wide range of teas and a wide range of extracts. And when we are trying to target a problem really fast, extract is going to be your best bet. Teas are great too, right? The natural herb is great too, don't get me wrong, but when we're talking about something like telogen effluvium or something like Anagen Effluvium, where you want to start turning things around really fast, the extract is going to be your best bet. Majority of the constituents within each herb have already been broken down and pulled out of the plant by the glycerin or the alcohol that I use within the formulation of these extracts, these tinctures, and these elixirs, right? So number one, the elixir that I have, the Saw Pimento elixir. This one is amazing. Saw Pimento is amazing because Saw Pimento ends up reversing that thing that I told you about. Remember when I tell you guys about DHT? DHT is what the testosterone that lives in everybody's body, male and female, converts into, and this DHT attacks the hair's follicle. Remember how we talked about stress, and stress, whether it's like coming from internal or whatever the case may be, some of those causes, well, that's what we were talking about. The testosterone is converted into DHT, and stress is one of those triggers, right? So all of those things that we talked about, Saw Pimento is one of those things that reverses that conversion. So it's amazing. So it is absolutely an amazing addition to your everyday, and it's super easy for you to add to your diet. You could literally just put a couple of drops in it in your water, and that's it for the day, and you can't even taste it. Number two is going to be ginseng. Ginseng, which is prevalent in this blend here, is amazing at stimulating hair follicles, which in return is amazing for the hair growth cycle, because if it's stimulating the hair growth cycle, if it's stimulating the follicle, that means it's gonna tell the follicle, hey, whatever you're supposed to be doing, do it real good, do it. Rosemary is another one that when ingested on a regular basis, you can even use it in different recipes and things of that nature, right? When ingested into the body, it is amazing for your hair growth, and the property this one holds is once again promoting circulation, which in return will promote healthy hair growth. Now remember, the circulation is important because your body is a city. So if you want these cells to separate and for your body to begin to produce new hair growth cells through the anagen phase, you need healthy oxygen flow, and the ginseng is going to do that. Next up is aloe vera. Now you can drink aloe vera juice, or you can get you can do what I do, which is I either get fresh aloe, chop it up and freeze it, or you can get some like some little pre-cubed aloe. I will put it here on the screen, and you could just dump that in your smoothies, and it is an amazing addition. Aloe vera helps to promote hair growth through the inside by helping the body to produce more hair growth cells, because the same amino acids that live within aloe vera are the same amino acids that your body needs to make healthy hair, skin, and nails. So it is an amazing addition. It's like doubling up with your body. It's literally fueling your body to produce more hair growth cells through the anagen phase. Peppermint is amazing and has been known to increase blood flow and blood circulation to the scalp and the rest of the body. Next up is horsetail. Horsetail is another. Horsetail is wonderful because it's rich in silica, and we've talked about silica in this video here, but I will say nothing gets the job done for circulation and for anagen effluvium like blue butterfly pea flower does. I am in love, and if you want to know more about how blue tea helps, make sure you check this video in the description box below. The antioxidants that live in green tea, and a couple of different forms of green tea, are so rich in antioxidants that supports the division and the production of those healthy hair growth of those healthy hair cells that you need for the anagen phase. Next up is nettle. Nettle is rich in so many different vitamins and amino acids that your body uses to produce the cells that grow your hair in the first place. So by having nettle extract as a part of your everyday, or just nettle leaf in general, is going to be absolutely amazing for your everyday. So in part 2, we're going to talk all about telogen effluvium, right? But I do need you guys to head over to my blog post so you can learn more, right? Because so many times we think that every hair product that they put on the market can help you with hair loss. But let's go over real quick before we go just a couple of different disorders that stem from anagen effluvium. One is alopecia areata. Number 2 is lupus. Number 3 is this one that I'm not about to say. Number 4 is Graves' disease. Number 5 is another one that I'm not about to try to say. Number 6 is psoriasis, which we've talked about here on the channel before. Number 7 is another one that I'm not about to try to say, but you can read it for yourself. It's a form of lupus. Number 8 is celiac disease. Number 9 is vitiligo. So what I want you guys to do is make sure you head over to my blog. I break down the exact way how anagen effluvium is linked to these different disorders that I told you about. All right, so until our next video, let me know what you guys think about this video. Make sure that you go and shop within Cynple Apothecary so you can make sure that you reverse or prevent your anagen effluvium. All right, and until our next video, bye.